All right, on tonight's episode of Python Papi, we're back inside our artificial intelligence course and we're still doing our learning module. Let's have a look at what we went over tonight. Now, last night, if you recall, we started the process of formalizing our line graph up here, and we're going to build off of that tonight. So now let's try to formalize this a little more mathematically. We want to come up with some sort of function, somewhere we can define this line. Now, our inputs are things like humidity and pressure in this case. And our inputs we might have are x1, which represents humidity, and x2, which will represent our pressure. These are inputs that we are going to provide to our machine learning algorithm. And given those inputs, we would like for our model to predict some sort of output. And we are going to predict that using the hypothesis function, which we called h. So this is the function, or this is the algorithm here we would use. H, x1, x2 equals. Our hypothesis function is going to take as inputs x1 and x2, humidity and pressure in this case. And we can imagine that if we didn't just have two inputs, we had three or four or five, we can have this hypothesis function take all those as inputs. And we'll see an example of that in just a minute. And now the question is, what does this hypothesis function do? Well, it really just needs to measure. And this data point, is the data point on that side of the boundary or is it on that side of the boundary? So it just really measures exactly where the point falls, on what side of the boundary or what side of the line. And how do we formalize that boundary? Well, the boundary is generally going to be a linear combination of these input variables, at least in this particular case. So what we are trying to do when we say linear combination is take each of our inputs and multiply them by some number that we are going to have to figure out. We'll generally call that number a weight for how important should these variables be in trying to determine the answer. So we'll weight each of our variables with some weight and we might add a constant to it just to try and make the function a little bit different. And the result, we just need to compare. Is it greater than zero or less than zero? Basically, does it belong on one side of the line or the other? And so, what the mathematical expression might look like is this: rain if weight is zero plus weight one, x1, or input one plus weight two, input two, is it greater than zero or equal to zero? We would take each of the variables x1 and x2, multiply them by some weight. That would be the w0 I showed you. And we don't yet know what the weight is. That's why it's W0, but it's going to be some number, weight one and weight two. And maybe we just want to add some other weight zero to it because the function might require us to shift the entire value up or down by a certain amount. And then we just compare. If we do all the math, it's greater than or equal to zero. Now that's where I'm going to stop for tonight. We did take a lot of notes and we did dive a little bit deeper, but I'm not going to get into that right now. But I will pick it up for you tomorrow and keep you posted every step of the way as usual. But for now, this is the Python Papi. You guys stay Gucci.